Hello, Newspeak team here. Rafe Hayden-Manku, Amy Gallagher, Dr. Philip Kisley. Before we talk about our issues this week, we've also got a very important notice to draw to our attention. That is our annual Smith Lecture, and that is happening on the 25th of November, Tuesday, the 25th of November in London. If you want further details, please do go to our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. There you'll be directed to wherever you need to go to get tickets. It's always a brilliant event. It will be especially brilliant this year because you're going to be getting 4 for the price of 1. Because we are going to be making speeches on very specific lines, which I think will be of great interest to you. But anyway, it will be explained in the details of the invite. So do join us there. Philip, the BBC is kind of this week, it seems to me that it's crossed some kind of Rubicon.
Yeah, it seems to be really imploding. There's lots of stuff going on. First of all, they're facing a parliamentary inquiry, actually, for their bias, which just goes to show how far they've fallen.
Brought on by what?
But brought on by lies and bias, for BBC bias.
But what started the...
Okay, so there's a couple of things. First of all, there's the Donald Trump actually doctoring the text of his speech. Okay, so changing his speech to fit the agenda, to fit the narrative. Yeah. Then other things as well. As we know, they have this thing called BBC Verify, which is essentially there to verify facts. It does nothing of the kind. It verifies the agenda. Yeah. It verifies the narrative. And again, with ridiculous things as well. So there's one story about insurers saying that essentially all car insurance is racist, and it is as lumpen and as stupid as that. So when they looked into it, there was no research. All the research was completely skewed, completely biased, and that all fell apart. Also, with their app, and this is for me the really interesting thing. If you go onto the app, you will never see stories about mass immigration because they just don't present them. But what they've promoted over the last year or so are stories about Russell Brand. So what you're getting is pap. What you're getting is nonsense. I mean, the issues surrounding Russell Brand, yes, of course, they're very, very serious, but they're not mass immigration. They're not Islamism. They're not stabbings on trains. They're not all of these kinds of things. So there's this manipulation of the narrative, which just goes on and on and on at every level. And so now they are going to be hauled in front of Parliament because the bias is just so ridiculous and so in everybody's face that they can no longer deal with it. They can no longer say, well, it's a mistake, or, well, no, actually we're presenting the other side. They're both siding it. They're clearly not, and right at the heart of this, I think, as well, is their very definite, deep and complex anti-Semitism. So they're reporting on Gaza as well. They've been in trouble for this, for the documentary. Where they had the son of a Gazan official as a narrator. They've been in trouble for all of this kind of thing. So all of that kind of stuff, all of these issues, which are the culture war issues, they are presenting one side of the culture war issues, and they are supposed to be impartial. And as I say, they're anything not. And now, at least, they're beginning to get in trouble for it.
How much trouble, though?
Well, the head of Ofcom, Lord Grade, has written to the chairman of the BBC Trust to say you need to look into this. What's been released is that this is all coming out from an internal dossier that was created and written internally, and the Telegraph got hold of it and have released it. And it's also said things, so some of the leading historians in the country said that you are providing woke history. You're getting some weird loner historian that no one has ever heard of to front a documentary and present completely falsified or, very controversial historical facts. Also, there are no reporters now at the BBC who do individual cases in the way they used to because of funding cuts. So if there's a story to deal with gender identity, it's given to the LGBT desk. But then there's a natural inherent bias there, and they've actually been celebrating the trans community without uncritically and silencing anyone who wants to contradict it. So all of this it's been deeply embarrassing, and Tim Davies is going to have to come out out and talk about this. And the BBC is apparently in crisis over this.
Yes, this transgender thing. I read about that. They, it's not just a kind of unconscious bias, is it?
No, they had trans activists in the BBC that were basically promoting transgenderism, as Ray said, uncritically, but wanting dramas that were pro-trans, promoting stories that were pro-trans, and gender-critical feminists or anybody that disagreed was squashed. I mean, we saw, Hannah Barnes, who spoke about puberty blockers at the Tavistock in 2020, she said that she really had to push for Newsnight to talk about it, but there was a silence across, the BBC and the mainstream media around that issue, and it took a lot of people speaking up and media outlets like GB News to promote the issue, and then finally it got heard. But we've been seeing this for a long time, and I think particularly since the October 7th attacks, there's been a very, very anti-Israel bias. This internal report also showed that BBC's Arabic news was guilty of essentially playing down anything that was happening to Israelis, and really being very quick to portray Israel as the aggressor, and sometimes actually in a way that was wrong. Actually, they were promoting Hamas propaganda essentially. So I think it all goes back to Brexit. I think that's when I became aware that the BBC was just utterly biased and that it was pushing Remain, wasn't it? It wasn't giving a balanced view of Brexit. But since then, it's just got worse and worse and worse. And I know so many people now that just say they don't watch it, and they haven't watched it for years.
I mean, with this, sorry, I was going to say, what you think about this thing is with this is, yes, many people realise there's a problem with the BBC, but those other media outlets, whether it's Sky or ITV, which is becoming super woke, all of these, they rely on the BBC. They're not stupid. They know that if the BBC goes, they all crumble.
Yeah, they do. They rely on it. It's all, everything is, as Lenin said, everything is related to everything else. What Amy said about the instances of bias there, especially in relation to Israel, this isn't just a few or in the tens or the hundreds. This is in the thousands, okay? Thousands and thousands of instances of clear and atrocious bias. But when I say everything's related to everything else and all the other channels are watching, it's deeper than that, actually. It's the people who are going to work there, the people who are going through the system, who are being taken on as trainees and then go through as assistant producers, executive producers. They're all the same kind of person. They're all the chattering class Ponsonby Smythes, as I call them, types, okay? Because what we're not getting anymore, we're supposed to be a country that's getting less class conscious. We're not. We're getting much more class conscious. Working class kids are not going to university to do arts, media-based subjects, creative industries-based subjects, because they can't afford to, and they don't feel at home in ridiculously woke indoctrination centers like the universities around this country. So what you're getting is a particular kind of person already indoctrinated, bought up around it, massively, extremely wealthy, many of them, going into the industry and just propagating this mindset, and they all think exactly the same thing because there aren't other types of people there to challenge them. It's that's what's kind of happening, I think, with the BBC at the moment.
Yes. I get the impression that they're kind of much happier to let the mask slip now.
Well,
in the sense that people sort of like talk about, it's so great, when they leave, Emily Maitlis, when they leave, it's great to be able to speak my mind. And you sort of think, well, what was so difficult before? What was so inhibiting for you before? It's always along the left lines, along the left lines. And I if you think that with some of the issues, you mentioned thousands of, you might remember that there was about 20 years ago a major report, internal, about the BBC's broadcasting on Gaza and on Israel. And in fact, they never released it. There have been so many attempts to get it released. They won't release it. The implication being that it was bad. Yeah? What I would like to know is, where do we go next with this thing? We've done, NCF alone has done 2 reports on the BBC. They're both well received and all of that, and that's great. What is the next occasion that there can be to basically seriously change the situation, get rid of it or change it in some radical way?
Well, I think this seems to be, to me, this report should trigger something to be done. I mean, we talked about it on the show not long ago, but there was a nationwide survey conducted by the BBC recently asking people what they thought of their concerns. And the two biggest concerns were that it wasn't impartial and that it was too politically correct. And Tim Davies said, we're going to, think about what we're going to do about this. It's just whether they can. I mean, it seems to me that they are so corrupted, internally, in terms of all their staff are totally woke, as Philip was saying. I mean, there was a story not long ago about how they were advising staff that they could work from home if they didn't like the Supreme Court ruling that, biological sex means sex in terms of toilets. If you're a trans woman and you don't want to, all that stuff, that you can work from home if you don't like it. So I don't know. It seems they'd have to completely change everything. And I don't know whether they'd be willing to do that. But what's going to happen, and what has been happening, is that people year in and year out stop paying the licence fee. Yeah. It's got hundreds of thousands a year, as I understand it. It's going down. So it will just become, I think what will probably happen is it will just become less relevant and it will kind of fizzle out and it will continue to put out the kind of stuff it continues to put out now. But it just won't have the respect and it won't have the numbers.
Well, I think it will probably become a subscription service. And if it is a subscription service, then it can do all of that. If people want to pay for that, they can certainly pay for that. The problem is at the moment, everybody else is forced to pay to watch other channels. You're supposed to have a television license to watch live TV. So if you're watching something which is completely the opposite, like Talking Pictures TV or something, which lots of our viewers will know about, technically you have to have a television license to watch that. Now that's got nothing to do with the BBC. So this is the most regressive tax you could possibly have. Like I say, and if it does become a subscription service, great, fine. You can watch all that nonsense and you pay for it, but I'm not going to.
You're a little bit more torn on this, aren't you?
I've always said that every nation needs to have a national broadcaster of some kind to cover national events. I mean, no one does. I mean, I agree with everyone about the criticisms of the BBC, but still, when it comes to great national events, I think you do need to, and also important news stories, you do need to have a national broadcaster there, even if it's just dealing with news and so forth. But there's also a function of the BBC, which, they still do produce some very decent documentaries when the subject matter isn't a political subject matter or doesn't have anything to do with that. And there is an argument to be made to have a channel that covers issues and aspects of British culture which wouldn't be commercially viable. And there's a necessity, I think, in order to show people that the essence of British identity is to, but no, we're not doing it any longer. They used to when we were growing up, the old coal mining brass bands, all that sort of stuff. That's the sort of program I'd like to see where you can actually show the British public, because the BBC was one of the institutions that created social cohesion, because we actually understood ourselves as a nation by watching BBC programming.
Course, yeah.
So if there's a way to actually streamline the BBC to produce, cover national events, coronations and funerals and so forth, but also cover those very, I would say, important local cultural issues.
Yeah.
I think there's something there, but of course it has to be done in an impartial manner.
I think that they pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, did they, with royal events recently, after having reached a kind of nadir.
Yeah.
Around 20 years ago, and they've kind of got better there.
Have, but it's not just the content, it's the culture of the BBC as well. So I'm thinking about Hugh Edwards just recently, but I'm also thinking about Jimmy Savile and Gary Glitter and the history, which connected with the bias, connected with the anti-Semitism. It wasn't so long ago we were talking about Glastonbury, where the BBC staffers thought it was perfectly okay to broadcast live some idiot shouting death to the IDF. So I think it's all of those things, and it's interesting what Rafe says there, because this is the same thing about subsidized arts, isn't it? High-end arts, and the problem we have is with the arm's length institutions, which are themselves captured. So it's very difficult to envisage the BBC producing objective, British friendly stuff because the arm's length institution that will deal with that will be massively woke. And you can't imagine it being called the BBC. I think it would have to be something else because of all the reasons I've just said.
For example, I just watched Simon Sebag Montefiore's excellent 3-parter on the history of Vienna. BBC produced, I mean, absolutely wonderful. You can't fault it. There was no political agenda there. Great BBC documentaries about fishing villages in the country. I think where you're seeing the old craftsman techniques and all that sort of a thing. So there is a role for that when it's outside the identity politics and the political agenda.
Yes. Always used to be the proms. People say, BBC, what will we do without the proms? It's worth remembering the proms were there before the BBC, started by one Henry Wood. He's the guy that they've always put the nice laurel around every year at the end of the proms. Are we sort of thinking that if the BBC weren't there anymore, that no one would take up that particular honour of funding the proms? I think they would.
I don't know how well it's funded by the BBC.
Phenomenal expense.
Certainly Glastonbury will be another one.
Yes, exactly. But that one I think is one. Rafe, Amy, Philip, thank you very, very much.
Hello. Please excuse this brief interruption, but I'd be really grateful if you could please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel. Our mission is vitally important, and we must grow this channel to ensure that our content reaches the biggest possible audience. The best way to do this is for you to subscribe. It's totally free. And in addition to subscribing, if you're able to donate or join our membership scheme, please click on the link in the description or visit our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. We've got great plans ahead, but we can't do it without your support. From only £4 per month, you'll receive a range of perks and benefits, including exclusive content. Thank you.